Our next question is from a young man, Shah Jahan Bajwa. He's grade 9 student, son of Maqbool Bajwa Sahib, and he says, I had a question from one of my friends, and he asked me that I heard that if you die whilst at war, serving your country, you will be sent to heaven. Now in Iraq, this is what Shah Jahan is writing, and these are his words. Now in Iraq, the US troops are there now, not because they're serving or protecting their own country. Would they still be sent to heaven if they die? God forbid, in reference to them dying. Could you please answer this question? So I think what Shah Jahan is putting into context here, he's had a discussion with one of his friends at school about the war, and obviously this whole issue of the wars away from the US, away from Europe, be they in Iraq or Afghanistan, is a very emotive question. And he's trying to sort of tie the two things together about serving one's country with loyalty, dedication, as many troops do, with the same time as the justifications of wars. Dr. Zaid Saab, if I could come to you first on that.
Well, we know that we read in the Holy Quran that those who die in the cause of Allah do not consider them as dead, but that consider them as living and consider them as favored by Allah. So we know that this subject is dealt with by Islam. And the Holy Prophet ﷺ has further elaborated the subject of martyrdom and has given different categories of people dying in different circumstances who would be given the same honor, that their cause would continue and they should not be considered as dead but by favored by Allah. People who drown, for instance, people who die in an accident, they also are considered as martyrs and have this award given to them. Here the question is a more specific question and is of defending one's country. Now we know that Islam endorses that we have to show loyalty to our nation wherever we are. Islam is a universal faith, so in whichever country we reside, we are the citizens of that country and we show loyalty to that country. And if as an occupation we are part of an army of that country, then it is our duty to undertake whatever duties are given to us in that respect of going to war and defending for whatever reason that war has been initiated. And so in this respect, it can be argued that the soldier who does not make the decisions as to why his country went to war, or whether it is for the protection of that particular country, or whether it is from the harmful effects of that country coming to bomb your country, he has not taken that decision. He has been given the command by his his army to go and fight in that cause.
So the government has made a decision, and the army are the implementers of that decision, and this person is obviously, as a soldier, loyal to the force he is part of.
So as a loyal soldier, he has gone there on that precepts, and then if he does meet his death in the line of duty in that respect, then of course one should consider whether that is also martyrdom, and that perhaps is martyrdom. But one thing worth bearing in mind is that it is for Allah, of course, to decide as to who goes to heaven and who doesn't in general life as well. The Holy Prophet ﷺ has said, it is not my deeds, or it is not because of my deeds that I will be going to heaven, but it will be the sheer grace and mercy of Allah. So if the Prophet ﷺ said that about himself in that circumstance, then everything else has to be put into perspective and say that it is going to be the grace of Allah, whether he gives that award of heaven or not to us.
I think that sort of encompasses that. Jahangir Saab, if I could just come to you, I suppose in part what the questioner is also asking is the issue which sometimes confronts everyone, which is over a moral choice on looking at a particular conflict, wherever that conflict may be, and it's particularly that much more difficult for someone serving in the military, as to when you see the conflict, the reasons for going into a particular war or conflict, as to whether it's justifiable. And often the alternative is, if they feel so strongly, is one of being imprisoned because you're not fulfilling your obligation as a soldier. That moral, I mean, how does a soldier if you're serving in the armed forces?
How do they deal with that?
Yeah, I mean,
well, as Dr. Zahid Khan Sahib has said, the general rule would be that if a soldier is serving his country in his army, wherever that may be, wherever the army may take him, and he dies, during the course of his duty, then he would perhaps be considered a martyr by Allah. Of course, it's for Allah to decide, but there is a possibility there. Having said that, of course, the death could come for different reasons. For example, while he's abroad, on mission, maybe he might be attacked by the enemy. If he dies in that attack, he might become a martyr. Or during a skirmish between, when the opposing camps are actually fighting, he's killed during that, then that's another way he could die. He could be attacked in the streets, that would be another way he could die. But there is another issue which you've brought up, which is the soldiers might actually be asked or ordered by the army to carry out some mission which is morally objectionable to any individual person. That's something completely different. For example, they could be asked to go into some village and kill all the children there. Now that's a big dilemma. That's not like being killed during regular warfare or being killed in an attack. This is now outside the general principle which Dr. Saab has rightly mentioned. So one should of course serve the country, and if one dies during that service, one could be a martyr. But if one is asked to do something morally objectionable, then it's for the soldier to make that decision and bear the consequences. If, for example, he's going to be court-martialed and then perhaps he might be given the death sentence for treason, that could be a possibility. He'll have to bravely face up to that if that's the decision he wants to make. If he dies in that way, then again, it will be for God to decide whether he also died the death of a martyr or not. So this is how, a soldier is first and foremost a soldier, but he's also a human being, a moral human being, and he has to bear the consequences of what he's asked to do. So there are different cases, of course, and we can't apply, one rule to any given set of circumstances.
But as a general principle, I think, as Dr. Zaisov said, that ultimately life and death, whatever context we look at, whatever arena, ultimately it's God to adjudicate and decide as to who goes to heaven and who doesn't, for that matter, in terms of their own fulfillment of their obligations. I suppose to Shah Jahan, I think you've, again, I hope, received quite a comprehensive answer there. It's obviously a question of serving one's country and interpretation of that as well, but generally speaking, I think the parameters of your question and the specifics have also been covered in that. Jazakallah, gentlemen, for that.